Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone to our webinar today. Nick, good to see you, my friend. I
Hey,
see
good to see you.
Brandon and David, TJ, Abdul. Brandon, I didn't see a last name for you. I'm curious if you're one of the Brandons that I know or if we haven't met yet. I'm curious. Good to see you. So as we kind of get started, I want to do kind of a soft beginning because it's always just a few minutes before a lot of people come in. Curious to just have you type in the chat, if you can. What's an interesting skill that you have? Okay. Just this is more of a getting to know you. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know, but and one of our themes for today and some of the things we're going to be talking about is this idea of connecting at a more human level, which can sometimes be difficult here in a Zoom digital platform. But if we can share things a little bit more about us instead of like, who are you, what do you do, where are you from? You know, it's just kind of a fun way to do it. So again, type in the chat the answer to this question. What is an interesting skill that you have? I'm curious to hear and see the answers. So do that and hope to see you. And by the way, cameras on if you can. Love to see faces to know that you're real humans instead of just names on a screen. Brandon Long, I do know you, Brandon Long. So good to see you, my friend. Glad to have you here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, TJ.
Okay,
Good to
good.
hear you. All right. Nick says his interesting skill is CAD and assembly. Nick, unmute for just a second, since I know you're willing to chat. Why is that interesting? I know you're really good at it, but why is that? Why do you feel like that's interesting?
I guess it's something that I take interest in. So maybe from a selfish perspective, it's interesting to me.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. It's perfect. All right. TJ says photography again. If you're just joining us, love for you to answer this question in the chat. What is an interesting skill that you have? Just as a fun way to kind of get us started here and start the conversation rolling. But I just want to thank, while people are joining us here, again, thanks everyone for being here. It's always fun to see some familiar and some new faces. And again, I would love to see faces if you can show your screen. I see wheel building, gardening, mechanical engineering. This is great. A lot of different skills out here. So again, if you're just joining us, share with us an interesting skill that you have so we can get to know you a little bit more. But today we're going to be talking about leadership in kind of a different way that I think normally gets talked about. We're going to be talking about self-leadership, how that impacts career success, but mostly from the context of how we can connect with the people who we are leading. And this can be applied whether or not you are currently an actual leader, at least in terms of like your role or title at work. That doesn't matter nearly as much as leadership being more who you are, not necessarily what you do or what your title is. And that comes from being able to lead yourself, right? And so we're going to talk about that in some different ways. And so I hope to be able to get some input and participation from you throughout our meeting and session, and we'll certainly have some time for some Q&A at the end. And there's some work that I am engaged in to help individuals and organizations and teams to level up leadership in some of the contexts that we can talk about. So we can talk about that if there's any interest from you after today as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will get rolling on this. Derek, good to see you here, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, can I get some thumbs up that we can see the screen that I'm sharing here? Okay, very good. So yeah, how to grow your self-leadership for engineering career success, leading yourself first. So throughout the session, we're going to use a tool I like to do when we're doing webinars. I call it the quick chat, where I just ask a question, and I want you to type your answer into the chat box, but don't actually press enter to submit it until I do kind of a countdown. What that does, that means kind of all the answers are coming in simultaneously, which makes it kind of fun. So the first question is, where are you joining us from? It's always interesting. Sometimes we have people internationally that are joining us. So it's interesting to see that. I know seen some of your faces. We've got some folks on different sides of the United States and people central. So again, type in where you're at, but don't press enter. So we go 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, so a few in California, Washington, LA. So we're definitely skewed over here on the Western United States. And then TJ's over in Michigan. Excellent. Okay, and Arizona, very good. So curious if anyone's there. Had people in a lot of interesting countries sometimes, but looks like we're all in the US this time around, so very good. So if we haven't met, just a little bit about me. I founded More Than Engineering almost 4 years ago now, with a background in mechanical software and manufacturing process improvement and engineering leadership. I founded that to help, like it says there at the bottom, help engineers unlock their potential to create change and change for themselves and change for their organizations and really their lives. I'm the father of 4 beautiful children. This is a picture of us shortly after my youngest was born earlier this year. Like doing stuff outside. I'm an avid reader. So if you want to talk books, I'm always interested in that. And recently, the last couple of years, I got into pickleball. So any pickleball fans would love to play if we're ever together. It's always good. And so just my promise to you, I want to state my intention so you know what I'm trying to accomplish here, right? I want you to have a framework to evaluate your current level of leadership, no matter what your title is. And I want to give you resources and opportunities to continue to grow beyond today, because like you can come here and have all the knowledge in the world. And it seems like I was reminded of this principle like 3 or 4 times just yesterday in things that I was reading or listening to, that we talk a lot about this idea of knowledge is power, right? But that's not really true. It's the power comes from the applied knowledge. Knowledge doesn't do anything good for us unless we do something with that, right? And so my invitation here is for you to engage with the session, try and put the cell phone away and other distractions, to actively participate, see what you discover. But what I didn't put on here is to identify at minimum 1 action, but ideally more actions that you're going to take as a result of this section. Because if you don't do anything because of this, then why are you giving me this time? Why are you giving yourself this time for being here? So please, please, please take that time for yourself, and then identify the actions that you can take to move and change and grow as a result of something that you take from today. Okay, so that's my invitation. Be as present as possible and then take some action afterwards, right? So let's dive into the content. I want to share some news. First of all, some bad news that you may or may not be aware of. So some of this data right here comes from the Gallup report. Gallup does a worldwide report that focuses a lot on workplace data. And this data here is around engagement, showing that employee engagement is low at around 31%. That's down a little bit from last year. That's in the US. Globally, it's at 23%. So the US is a little bit better than the global average. But still, while that might be a pretty decent batting average if you were a Major League Baseball player, it's not great when you think of over 2/3 of employees in the United States are disengaged, are not engaged in some way. Not great. And obviously leadership has a huge component to this. Stress in employees is high at over 50%. The question they were asking, hey, did you experience this feeling of stress yesterday for their survey participants? And a lot of people are intending to leave. So this idea of quiet quitting has been around for the last year or so. This kind of talks about that, where 47% of people are watching for, actively seeking a new job of some way. That's pretty high. Maybe that's quite a few of you in some regards, or you are working with people who are feeling that, and there's something for you to do. So if you are a leader, this is something you need to be aware of. The other thing I find is interesting is that as far as how much people are being paid, or the costs of employees and how much they're getting done are moving in the wrong direction. So productivity overall, and this comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, productivity of employees is down, but costs are up. So the real hourly compensation, that's that last one, is down over 2%. And that's not huge, you might think, but that's significant across industries and across time. So here's some of the lessons that I think we can take from this. Is there are a lot of us who don't feel valued and supported in the workplace. And what this does is it leads to lower things like productivity, satisfaction, and innovation. And if you are a leader in any regard or an engineer, these are things that you want to be high on, is all three of these things, but those are hard to get to right now. And so that's my take on this. I'm just curious, why do you think this is, right? Why do you think engagement, innovation, and productivity, some of these numbers we were talking about, are low right now? What do you think some of the underlying causes or the root causes are for these things? Any thoughts here? Put them into the chat, and I would love to an answer from all of you. And we'll do a countdown in just a moment. I'll give you a few more seconds to do that. I'll take a drink. And we'll go 3, 2, 1, go. Shifting industries. Interesting. Any other thoughts here? Why do you think some of these numbers are low right now? Engagement, innovation, productivity. What do you think? Micromanagement certainly can be a factor here. So here's my take. And I've seen another one coming here. Companies no longer opt for compensating new employees more than their counterparts. They no longer offer pensions, nothing to keep employees long-term. That's an interesting thing for thinking about legacy employees, people who've been around a long time. Hearing lack of value system, COVID changed how people are working and living with a lot of virtual work and stuff like that. Interests aligning in our work. So yeah, I'm loving all these things. So here's a few of my thoughts here, is that work has become, I think it's been like this for a while, but I think we might just be, it may have increased, but I think we're definitely more aware of it after COVID and some other things and some of the work-life balance and people sort of reevaluating things, is that work has become really transactional, right? Show up, get a paycheck, here's what you need to do, here are your tasks, and just do the thing, and that's all we care about, right? And that can be a challenge for a lot of people. That's not really an engaging way to live. It's more of a checklist, show up, punch the clock, do the thing, and leave. Certainly not promoting a high level of engagement and innovation. From a leadership side, sometimes we get kind of a do as I say, not as I do approach, where leaders aren't really leading out in maybe talking a good talk, but not really walking that walk. And so that can be tough. And then this is a big piece from a self-leadership standpoint we want to talk about. Sometimes we lose touch with ourselves and our purpose. And that's assuming we've even identified our purpose and are clear on what we're trying to become personally as an individual, as a leader, right? We lose touch with that and how that relates with the things we're doing in our career, and just kind of go through the motions, right? So, and one challenge is just to kind of illustrate this. Maybe some of you have seen something like this. Maybe you've experienced this or seen this happen to other people who are moving through an engineering leadership transitions. Often when we're talking about that transition from an engineer to a leader, right? It's often a great engineer, and for good reason, right? We wouldn't want to take a crappy engineer and ask them to lead a team. But we take a great engineer, we ask them to lead a team, and we throw them into the fire of now suddenly your focus is not doing great engineering work, it's leading a team to do great engineering work. And that's a big shift for everyone, right? But we don't give them a whole lot of support here. And they do their best, but they don't usually realize how much of a shift it is to lead others versus do engineering work, and what that really looks like, and they don't have the mentoring and support to do that. And so we kind of intentionally set them up to fail in that regard. So you can kind of think about, the Emperor in Star Wars, like your failure is complete, right? So, but usually this is unintentional, but it's just sort of everyone else is focused on what they need to do, and we say, hey, here's your job now go do the thing. And that sets the leader up for failure, but it also usually sets their team up for failure, and that's a challenge, right? And so I've been kind of doom and gloom for the last few minutes, but I want to share that there's some good news here too, is that every one of us can do something about this, okay? We can take some ownership in how this influences us. So you can change how you lead yourself. And in doing so, that's going to change how you move through different opportunities and challenges, right? You can transform how you lead others if you are a leader by title and role in an organization, or just how you use the principles of leadership influence to influence others and connect with them. And therefore, we can improve our own contribution to collaboration and innovation in the workplace, which I think all those things are connected. When we're connected, when we're collaborating, then we're innovating. And usually when that happens, we're also more engaged because we're having more fun at work. But don't also forget that the idea of leadership happens everywhere. We're mostly applying it to a context of career in the workplace, and that's certainly true. But leadership as a principle and an idea happens in all aspects of our lives, whether at work, home, in our community and neighborhoods and cities, with our friends and our family, and even just the small moments as we cross paths with the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. So I want you to think about this idea of leadership, that leadership starts with you, the self, and then we can think about how you lead a team and potentially an organization. But all of us have this ability to start at the center of this diagram and lead ourselves. And that's kind of the call to action and thought for you right now. And so the question here for just to ponder here, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, right? I want you to take just a few moments and consider, how would you rate your current level of self-leadership, right? You got to start somewhere. And I don't care if you feel like you're a 1 or a 5, but where are you at right now? If I were to rate myself at the moment, I'd probably give myself a 3. I've been inconsistent in my level of self-leadership on a number of levels, and some things that I feel like I'm doing quite well, but that has been inconsistent in other areas, in living congruently with the things that I really care about. And so that's just me personally, but I invite you to answer that for yourself. Where would you put yourself on that scale? Put the answer to this question in the chat, and then press enter in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, I'm seeing a range here. I do 1 to 5 to compress this, but then you guys are still trying to break the rules that I didn't explicitly do, and do like 0.5s, and I see a 0.9 in here. Like, just use the whole numbers. But we're specifically imprecise here. But anyway, just kind of joking. But I see anywhere from 1 to 4, and everything in between. No one gave themselves a full 5, and I think that's probably fine, right? Although if you feel like if you are at a point in your life where you really feel like you're doing a good job, and things are feel really aligned, I hope you would give yourself a 5. I can say that there are probably periods in my life where I've felt like a 5. Today, yeah, probably not, and that's okay. Like we ebb and flow through this, right? And that's fine. So take the number that you've got right now and and throughout what we talk about for the rest of our session today, I want you to think, okay, what's one thing that I can do to try and move the needle and level this up to some degree? And we're going to be talking specifically about principles of leadership that connect us at the human level, where we need to be connected with ourselves and then connect with others. And this, again, influences whether or not we are a leader by title or not. So we're going to talk about principles of what I call connected leadership. We're going to build this out with a Venn diagram of 3 particular areas. And we're going to start with this idea of mindset and awareness that all of us need to grow. And this is a really internal piece that we need to address. Starts with our mindsets. If you're unfamiliar with the principles of mindsets, we can often characterize them perhaps as a set of attitudes that we hold, how we view people and challenges, the environment that we're in, beliefs that orient how we handle situations, how we're sorting out things that are going on. Basically, we would say that our mindsets drive what we do, and what we do then drives our actions, right? And therefore our results. So I want you to look at the diagram like this. So we would, kind of our mindsets of a foundational piece that drives our behaviors and actions, and that drives our results. But oftentimes, if there's any change we're trying to make in our lives, we often have a tendency to start prescribing actions and behaviors that we need to change. And we are only looking at prescriptions at the action or behavior level. It looks kind of like this, saying, hey, here's the new results I want to get. Here's all the things I need to do differently. But we are neglecting those mindsets and not actually changing them at the same time. And so if we're really going to do and make any change effectively and sustainably, we actually need to shift our mindsets along with our actions and behavior to have that foundation that are going to point towards this new set of results and opportunities that we're looking towards. Another couple of ways to think about mindsets is sort of like an internal operating system. So it's not just like an app on your phone, it's the operating system. So we need to kind of fundamentally upgrade the operating system of how we're acting in the world. We can also think about, if this is a more helpful metaphor, like there are lenses through which we see the world, right? So if you have a tough or a negative mindset, we might have the wrong prescription if we're thinking about glasses, or we might have damaged lenses, it might have scratches, and so we have a distorted view, right? But if we have the right prescription, then we can see things clearly, see the reality of the world, and that helps us be able to address the opportunities and challenges that we face. But the tough thing is, though, is that sometimes we are trying to make a change and we're neglecting the mindsets when we're trying to focus just on the behaviors and action we need to do, and neglecting the mindsets. What the reason why these mindsets are kind of holding us back, they're kind of almost pulling us back to where we were, because we have internal resistance that's inside of us. And some psychologists have compared this to kind of an immune response, right? They're almost like white blood cells that are attacking something new in our bodies. I'd also think about this idea of like, it's almost like you have your foot on the gas pedal, like, hey, I'm trying to change, I'm trying to do all these things new, but your mindset's like putting your foot on the brake. No, do not do that. This is not what we're used to. Like, hold it. Let's stay here for a second, right? And so we need to be able to unlock and understand what mindsets are holding us back. What are those beliefs and values that might be holding us back from changes that we're stating to make, so that we can make the changes that we're hoping to. And when this is an intentional process, we need to have meaningful goals that matter to us. There's a lot out there about kind of having your why, purpose beyond yourself, identifying core values, maybe having a mission or a vision statement. Really, all this is like, we're trying to figure out who we're trying to become, not just what we want to do, right? but who we're trying to become. And we need to remind ourselves of that on a very frequent basis. I'll just share one way that I attempt to do this. And I stole this from a friend of mine named Pat Sweet, who I saw did this. I created a desktop background that I use. And so this is my desktop background that is on my computer monitors. And so whenever I'm working, I'm reminded of these things. So it reminds me of my core values that I've put into a little acronym that helps me to remember them: gifts, growth, impact, faith, truth, significance. I have some images that are representative for me of some of these values and the things that I care about, right? But this is just a very easy visual of sort of my reasons and values that are driving the actions that I'm trying to take here. And so really this awareness is, and unlocking our mindsets, it's this opportunity of almost unlocking the potential within us. Like you think about potential energy that's in fuel, or if you had something high, and we think about like potential energy, gravitational potential energy, you drop something and it falls down, turns into kinetic energy. Each of us is full of potential energy, and we're trying to unlock that and turn that into kinetic energy of motion and progress in our lives and our careers. And awareness helps to unlock that potential and turn that into the kinetic energy. So I want to just give you all an opportunity to start this process, to gain some awareness and get clear on the change or the shift that would be most helpful for you to make, right? So I'm going to give you an opportunity. If you have a notebook or a journal or something you're taking notes on, I want you to take 60 seconds and brainstorm potential 3 to 5 big changes that you could make, right? So this could be changes that you could make in, and you can think about these as behavioral changes right now, right? Changes you can make in your leadership, or your health, or how you're operating at work, or a new skill you want to develop, whatever that is. I don't care what that is, but you decide that, and then kind of ask yourself, do a filter. Which of these would make the biggest impact on you as a person? Try and get that down to one that would be the biggest. And then the awareness piece comes in, where kind of in this bonus where, and you may need to take a little bit more time to reflect on this, but we're trying to identify the hidden commitment, the thing that's underneath that's kind of like pulling us back, and the resistance to that change, or what's keeping your foot on the brake. Try and think about what's the root cause of why that change is difficult for you. If you can do that, that can gain some awareness, and now you know what actions you need to take here to move forward. So take 60 seconds, brainstorm these, go through this as much as you can. I at least want to get you started, and then maybe you can take some more time later to reflect and ponder on these a little bit more. So I'll give you a little bit of quiet time here. Give you about 10 more seconds for now. Okay. Hopefully just taking a little space for yourself was helpful to identify some areas that you can shift, that you can change here. And I encourage you to continue forward with this activity beyond just our session today, and see what else comes up. to increase that awareness and move forward. Just to give you one example of someone that I worked with who did some of this process. This is Kent. He's a software expert and entrepreneur. We worked on a whole lot of things, but what he talked about here, you can see this in this third paragraph. He's able to discover the root cause of this block that was keeping him from moving forward, so he can unlearn that block and direct his forward momentum on learning a new pattern of bold, mindful confidence while leaving that self-sabotaging behavior in the past. So this is really what self-leadership is all about: identifying the blocks that are holding us back. They're also holding other people back and allowing us to unleash that potential. And Kent is a great example of this. And I was it was a pleasure for me to be able to help him to move through that, but he did all the hard work. And that's the beautiful thing about this. I just got to be the guide to help him do that. So that's what this process is all about. And we've just sort of scratched the surface, but I'd be happy to talk with you more about this if you're interested. So the next piece I want to get into is we're building out this idea of connected leadership, connecting with people. Once we've started to unlock some of that awareness in our mindsets, is improving our ability to communicate and the flow of communication. Because I don't know about you, I've been involved in a whole lot of meetings and situations where there was a problem with what happened. And the reason that people typically point to is there was some sort of miscommunication. And this happens at work, this happens in family disputes and all sorts of different things, right? Like it was a miscommunication, right? So communication is so critical, but it's also a very broad concept. But I put together a little model that I think is helpful for us to understand. Think about communication as something that's flowing. It's always moving. Information's coming in and out, and we need to kind of keep it moving in the right direction, the right places. So what we want to do is get in the right flow of communication. So when you think about it as a river, okay, and the two banks of the river are the two different skills of communication, kind of the two sides of our ability to listen and intake information, and our ability to share and speak or write communication, right? And inside of that is kind of this flow channel of communication. If you're only focused on one or the other, you're going to be on the bank and you're not going to be in the flow of communication, right? So we want to be in that balance of both. And I also love to think about the flow or the input of the whole river as kind of the reasons why. It's a purpose-driven flow behind that. What we don't want to do is be standing on the banks. We also certainly don't want to be a dam of communication either, where communication stops at us. So just to think about you, where a lot of people will have a strength on one side or the other, the listening or the sharing side, and most people have a weakness on one or the other side. So curious to just consider for you, which side do you most need to work on? Or do you most need to work on your listening skills, or confidently being able to share and communicate to others what you want to share and communicate with them? What area do you most need to work on? So type that into the chat, just sharing or listening. Give you just a few seconds there to type that in. And then we'll go 3, 2, 1, go. Enter that. So I'm seeing a lot of listening, some sharing, right? And it's always a mix here. If I were honest with myself, the area that I most need to work on is listening. I'm pretty good at wanting to hear myself talk. That's not the challenge, but the challenge is sometimes shutting up and really listening. And so that's what I'm going to focus on here first, is the listening side. Some people have identified that there are 5 levels of listening, where certainly we can ignore, or we can pretend to listen, or we can just selective listening. I think my kids do that a lot. And there's a lot of people who teach about attentive or active listening, where we're really listening and repeating back what people are saying. That's great. But we might say that the best version of listening is called empathetic listening, where we not just hear very clearly what people are saying, but we hear and seek to understand them at a more empathetic level to not just what they're saying, but what they're feeling and experiencing as we do this. Just a quote from Stephen R. Covey, who is the author of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, passed away a few years ago, but he said this about empathetic listening, that it's so powerful because it gives you accurate data to work with. Instead of projecting your own autobiography and assuming thoughts, feelings, and motives and interpretation, you're dealing with the reality inside another person's head and heart. You're listening to understand. You're focused on receiving the deep communication of another human soul. This is a beautiful thing, right? And it's not like every single person that you talk to and every single conversation you have is going to be at this level. But we're trying to get some of our communications to be there because this can really level up how we understand others, and therefore how we interact with and work with them in a career context or live with them in a home or family context, right? It's a beautiful thing. So that's just the invitation of listening is what you feel like you need to work on. I invite you to try and get to that level of listening where you're being more empathetic and really seeking to understand not just what they're saying, but what they're feeling, right? See if you can understand that. On the sharing side, there's a lot of reason that we want to share confidently or with conviction, right? Because if we're working in teams, working with other people, when we share with conviction, something that we really believe and we found to be true, that can create a sense of certainty in others. It helps reduce the fear of the people that we're communicating with and increase their confidence. It helps us be decisive because as a leader, whether you're just leading yourself or you're leading a team, you need to make decisions, right? You can't just share and like get everyone's feedback and always have a full consensus, right? That's not really possible in most circumstances. And so it helps us be decisive and say, this is the path we're going to go. Sure, you want to get feedback from the team in the right circumstances, but in the end, a decision needs to be made. And everyone needs to move forward. And I also invite you to, if sharing is what you're working on, share frequently, right? You don't want to be the dam of the information comes to you and then it dies, right? Keep people connected to the why we're doing these things, kind of the underlying purpose and what needs to happen. And if you're leading a team, let them take care of the how, right? Use their autonomy to do that, but help them be connected to the why and the what needs to happen. What are the goals that you're moving through together? So just an example here of someone that I worked with is an engineering business owner, Zach. He was really having a hard time to do some of the delegation and let go of some of that work, and allowed him to unlock and focus on some of the things that he was uniquely able to do and empower his teams to be able to do that. And it had to do with how he was communicating and improving how he was utilizing his team and giving them that ownership and delegation and autonomy so that he can unlock and communicate well. But previously he was holding back a lot of that communication and just holding things to himself. And so it's been fun to watch Zach go through some of this. So the final piece of this connected leadership model here is building psychological safety. Psychological safety is a really interesting topic here. Just to think about the power of why this is so important. A few years ago, Google, who is a very data-driven company, did a huge internal study of their best teams, and they were looking to try and figure out what makes the most effective teams here at Google. And it was what clearly rose to the top was psychological safety. It was by far the most important dynamic that made great teams. They found that people on teams with high psychological safety were less likely to leave, right? So that was great for the company. They were more likely to accept diverse ideas. So when we're trying to progress in diversity and inclusion, some of those things, psychological safety is a big indicator of that. it brought in more revenue and productivity. And those teams were rated as more effective, and the people in them were rated as more effective by their senior leaders. So what does psychological safety look like? Here are a few ways to think about this. And it's interesting, it may be interesting for you to consider how you felt on these measures with a team you're in now, right? Or maybe teams you've been in the past, okay? Teams with great psychological safety, they feel safe to take risks and to speak freely without any repercussion or danger. They're like, certainly there's accountability, like we need to be doing great work, but they're not going to be punished if they try something and it doesn't work out, right? Great teams encourage healthy and non-destructive conflict. And this is interesting. A lot of people are like, why would you say that conflict is a good thing? But if everyone's just agreeing with everything that everyone else says, then we're not actually really collaborating. We're just sort of saying, we're just sort of accepting everything at face value. And so healthy, non-destructive conflict is actually looks like great collaboration, right? And if there's a problem that someone sees, you want someone to be honest and share that instead of just keep their mouth shut, right? And in doing so, this is coming from a place where everyone's trying to really support each other, and that place of where that's coming from matters. You're trying to destroy, that's the destructive or non-destructive piece. We're trying to just criticize someone if we're trying to help them, right? That really matters. And then everyone's transparent with their strengths and weaknesses. One of the most well-known researchers in this field of psychological safety is Amy Edmondson. And she found these 7 questions to be very helpful to consider whether or not your team is a high level of psychological safety. I'm not going to read every single one, but just give you an invitation to look at these for a moment and see if you feel psychologically safe now, and what can you do also personally to do your part to improve psychological safety with the people on your teams or the people in your life, right? What can you do to improve that? Because it's everyone's responsibility to try and make it a safe and productive workplace. So again, I want you to kind of reflect for yourself, scale of 1 to 5, 5 is best. I'm going to be more explicit this time and say, just use positive whole numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. No decimals this time. And say, how psychologically safe would you rate your current or most recent team? For those of you who might be unemployed, in whatever context you feel like is most helpful, just rate your scale of 1 to 5 and consider why. And then that can either help you to say, okay, what can I do here? Or what kind of team do I want to find in my next role? And how can I support that in the future? So type in the number and press enter in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so in a whole range from 1 to 5. That's great to see. And I'm sorry for those of you who feel like it was a 1. I'm very pleased for those of you who feel like it's a 5. And so there's things to emulate and support and continue forward for those of you who it's a 1, and say, again, what responsibility can you take to make that better? And if it feels like it's a situation that isn't able to change, maybe there's a need for you to go somewhere else if you feel like that. Just kind of going back to this idea of like what you can do to encourage psychological safety is, especially if you are a leader in some sense, is to admit your own fallibility, right? Make clear that, well, and that's really about being vulnerable, which invites that vulnerability in others to admit mistakes. And when mistakes are known, that means we can do something about them. That's a very positive thing. Or if we're trying to hide mistakes, that's actually very counterproductive in most situations. We want to help other people feel like their voice matters. And we want to replace blaming and pointing fingers when things are going wrong with being curious as to say, what's the problem and what needs to improve, rather than saying who is wrong, right? So replacing blame with curiosity. So I'm just going to kind of summarize here these three different pieces: awareness, communication flow, and psychological safety. Here's some kind of symbols that might help you remember the different models and the ideas that we talked about. But at the center here, we were building this whole model of connected leadership. That's at the center here. This is connection and trust, this linking of people and humans that are really trying to accomplish great things, whether that's great things in the workplace or great things in our lives, because work is just one piece of living a great life. And when we have higher trust, as Stephen M.R. Covey, the son of Stephen R. Covey, shares, higher trust means that our speed or our innovation is going to go up and our cost is going to go down. When trust is low, speed is low, and cost is up. So clearly trust and connection bring more collaboration, more innovation, creativity, resilience, learning, and all these other pieces that we would like. So just as kind of I told you earlier, I wanted this to be action oriented. I want you to take away some actions after our session today. And so I want to just give you some examples of some things that you could do here on the three areas that we talked about. So on awareness or mindset, seek to continue to dig into that biggest change and what might be a hidden commitment keeping you back from making that change right now. On the communication side, decide, do you need to work more on listening or improving your communication and sharing with conviction more? And find an opportunity tomorrow to practice that. Try that out, decide someone who you want to practice that and try that. And number three, on psychological safety, find an opportunity to lead with increased vulnerability. How can you take a risk or help someone else do the same, right? And so these are different ideas to help you do that. So I hope today you feel like I kept my promise. I wanted you to leave with frameworks to improve your self-leadership and improve in ways that could influence your career for the better. And I really hope you feel like I kept my promise. But the question here is, hey, are you all good from here? Do you have everything that you need to succeed in your entire life now and forever? Well, the answer is kind of yes and no. I certainly didn't hold anything back. I wanted to give you as much value as I could in the time that we had. But as Warren Buffett could explain the idea of investing, one of the most wealthy people on the planet, he would say, buy low, sell high, and invest only in things that you understand. I understand that principle really well. That makes plenty of sense to me, but I'm not a multi-billionaire yet. And so there's some work to do there, but it is the details that kind of make the difference. So if you're truly committed to finding the answers and implementing these ideas, then even if things aren't looking great, then sometimes it takes some extra help and support to do that. You may have additional things you need to figure out to really clarify what is that biggest change, right? How do you break through those hidden commitments that might be holding you back and keeping your foot on the brake? How do you listen better and more effectively and grow in your conviction and sharing? How do you improve psychological safety with others in a more sustainable way? How do you share these ideas with others and implement these ideas across an organization or a team instead of just you? Because you're not the only one here, right? We're always working and interacting and connecting with others. And anything else that you don't know right now, right? So you can try and figure this out by yourself and take some of the ideas and take some actions here from today, and I hope you all do. Or you can accelerate that a little bit more, and I'd be happy to help. What I've found is that if people try and go their own way with this, often little to no progress gets made. But those who really make progress are the ones who invest in themselves, get some additional accountability and support, and take courageous action to continue forward. So if you really want to improve individually or with your team or organization, if there's an opportunity to do that, I've created some new offerings for individuals and organizations who want to get serious about this idea of connected leadership, starting from the self, building from the team, and then to the organization. It can take many forms of coaching, training, group facilitation, and speaking, but obviously this needs to be a fit that feels mutual. I need to fit you, and you need to be right for me and what I can really do to help you as well. So you've got a choice, right? I like to use physics analogies sometimes. one of Newton's laws is that an object at rest will stay at rest unless it's acted on by an outside force. So if you feel like for some reason you are at rest in some way, feeling stuck, unable to make some of the improvements, your self-leadership or other things, having a hard time motivating yourself or others, feel like there's a lack of alignment in your vision and goals and what you're trying to accomplish, having some of these communication struggles, low or collaboration innovation, you can certainly stay at rest. That's an option. Or we can work together and perhaps I can be that outside force to accelerate your leadership progress as soon as possible. So if you're interested, you want to talk more about this, I invite you to go to jeff-perry.com/connection-call. And I'll put the link in the chat in a moment here. And what this will do, we'll just set up a brief time to chat together. You'll see my calendar availability, and we'll discuss your unique challenges and goals that you have. And if we're a good fit, then we can design a package specifically for your needs. Okay. So you've watched this. If you want to change or improve, there's something you need help with. Again, go to jeff-perry.com/connection-call, because the success principles is do what works, not what doesn't. Get some training and support, even if it's not from me. Get some action and help and support that you need. Persevere, keep moving forward to become who you want to become, and you're bound to succeed. So with that, I will go to some Q&A time. Again, anything goes, don't be shy. Here's that connection call thing if you want to set up a time to talk with me, or another free resource I have for you. This is a brand new resource that I call the Connection Code. This is especially for organizations who are trying to identify what area they really need to work on to improve their connection in the organization. And so you can grab that at jeff-perry.com/connection-code. And it's an assessment that you can take, and some more information on some of the ideas of connection that we talked about a little bit today and why that's so important. But I do want to take some time for Q&A. Invite you to share a question that you might have in chat, or happy to have you on mute and ask a question, and I'll take the time that we can to do that. And thanks so much for Nick for throwing a little testimonial. Nick's been great to work with personally, and see some of the changes he's made, and just heard from him earlier today. So it was great and good to see you as always, Nick. But any questions from the group here that I can be helpful for? And by the way, I'm just throwing the links that I was just sharing in the chat to make it easier to find them. But anyone have a question or comment here, or a challenge to anything I said? I'd love. I'm always open to interesting feedback on what we talked about today that resonated or didn't resonate with you, that might be helpful for me to continue to improve presentations like this in ways that would be more helpful for more people.
Do you have a way to improve decisiveness?
Improve decisiveness. David, I think that was you that unmuted there.
Yes.
David, can you share a little context with me? Help me understand the question. When you're talking about decisiveness, what's the real challenge there?
I'm usually very pessimistic, so I see the bad in basically both sides, which makes it very hard to choose in many of those types of situations.
Yeah, situation like a personal choice, like a career choice that you're talking about, or like in an engineering context, like design A versus design B. What kind of choices are? Is there one type of choice that's especially difficult for you?
Mostly from a job or career perspective, most definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So one way that I might and it's just one tool to think through, is to reframe the problem, right? Because often you're talking about where you're focusing on the pessimistic side and like the bad things that could happen here. First of all, it's a whole lot more powerful to make decisions and move forward in thinking in ways that are more positive and moving towards what you want rather than trying to avoid what you don't want. Okay, so I invite you to think through that, what you're trying to accomplish, both in the short term and the long term. Again, kind of this idea of like, who are you trying to become? And then help use that lens to consider which option or approach might help me do that more effectively, right? And sometimes that means we need to make short-term decisions that aren't our forever opportunities or places or things we want to do, and that's fine. But we can do that in service of a longer term change that we're trying to accomplish. Another way that I want you to think about this is reframing a career decision that we might make, is kind of using an engineering analogy or metaphor of thinking like every step in our career is like a prototype, right? And so think about taking the next step. It may or may not work out well, but you want to design forward to thinking, what's the next prototype that's going to give me the best data around what I really like and don't like, and what's kind of the test that I want to run in my career, right? So instead of saying, oh, what could go wrong, and focusing on that, focus on what can you learn from either experience, which experience is going to give you the best learning and growth opportunity, to then prototype forward to becoming who you want to become. So, David, is that helpful for you at all?
Yes, definitely raises a few more personal questions for myself, but it does answer my question.
Okay, good. And again, I'd love to chat with you some more if you're trying to work through some of that. I do have a resource on career clarity specifically. If you want to grab that, just reach out to me and I can send that over to you as well if you want to take a look at that. So very good. Someone sent me a personal question. I don't think everyone can see it here in the chat, but I'll read it here. Do you have any suggestions for the academics? Usually the environment in graduate level studies is quite fearful when it comes to the research advisor. Students don't get to raise their voices and kind of feel helpless. I've heard a lot of stories like that. And I've heard of people being burned by their advisors, and even had a client recently who had some bad experiences where kind of got shafted by an advisor who kind of stole all of his work and then didn't attribute anything to him, and kind of ousted him from the program after he'd done a lot of cool things for him. And it's tough, right? So so obviously from the outset, as soon as possible, the filtering and the choice, as much as you possibly can, of your advisor is a critical decision, because going through the academic process in graduate level studies, whether that's just a master's or a PhD level study, is the advisor has a huge impact on what you're working on, what the research focus is, and whatnot. The thing that I will share is, again, going back to this idea of like controlling what you can control. Like, they can't force you necessarily into anything specific. And so if you can make a great case that is, like, if they're trying to say, hey, take your research or education one direction, and you really want to go a different direction, then you might need to have some very clear conversations about why, and you'll need to make that case in a way that shows how that's still going to benefit them, because in the end, they're the ones bringing in the funding for that, typically through their research or through the the educational institution or through some of their donors and people investing in the research, right? So you need to share why that's important and maybe even share a path to get more funding, which they're going to like as well, and also a path to some great publications, which researchers care about as well. So in the end, whether this is an academic pursuit or whether it's a career pursuit or something, anyone that you're collaborating with, you're trying to understand what they're trying to do and why. And if there's a shift that needs to be happening, you want to influence them in ways that helps them accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, as well as you accomplishing your side. Operating from a place of fear isn't great. If there's really a fearful place that's like quite destructive, there may be an organizational way to kind of raise that level of issue, but that can be sensitive, and I don't, every organization or institution is going to be a little bit different there, but hopefully that's helpful for you, Abdul. I know that can be really challenging and fearful at times, but taking whatever ownership you possibly can to move through that is what I suggest for you. Nori's got a question here. Is self-confidence and high level knowledge affected being good at leadership? Absolutely, right? And I'll just focus on the self-confidence side. Like, absolutely, if you are lacking confidence, then everyone that you talk to is going to recognize and feel that. So that's kind of that idea of the conviction and the communication we were kind of talking about. If you're communicating with conviction and confidence, then people are going to feel that positive energy from you. They're going to feel safer and more secure in what you're sharing with them. Now, I say that with some nuance, because having confidence doesn't mean that you and high level of knowledge means that you or anyone else wants you to be a know-it-all and a micromanager and really prideful as well. So there's some nuance there. Is having confidence, but also humble and open to receiving feedback and seeking to understand the needs of other people that you're working with. So because the answer is yes, with some nuance. It's like you never go too far, take confidence to where it becomes overly prideful, but still having the humility that you need to build the trust. And you're saying without confidence and a high level knowledge, how to be good at leadership. I think we need to build those things in you, because otherwise the leadership piece is going to be tough. So without digging too deep, again, if you want to talk more about that, then please reach out to me and we can talk more about that. But anyway, I want to thank all of you for being here. This has been a great discussion here at the end. And I really hope that, again, all of you take some action from our session today. Please reach out to me if you want to have a conversation or grab some of these resources that we've talked about. And always interested to help you as an individual or your organization if there are opportunities to do so. And wish you nothing but a fabulous week. And we'll be in touch soon. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you.
Gonna reach out to you on LinkedIn. I got a question for you, but I'll ask you there.
Okay, perfect.
They don't want it recorded.